In a stunning turn of events, this week's finals of the European version of the ESL Open Cup is a Terran versus Protoss. These two pro gamers have only played against each other about 4 dozen times so far this year. Spotting right here in game number 1 of today's best of 5, playing with the blue Protoss pieces, we have none other than MaxPax. And his opponent in the top right hand corner of Ghost River, of course, it's none other than Clem. The number 1 Terran from Europe goes up against the number 1 Protoss. I always enjoy watching these two play against each other because, well, they really bring out the best in one another. I feel like overall, it's been going slightly in favor of Clem whenever these two... I'm going to actually pull up the stats. I'm going to try and not spoil myself in the process. I feel like it's probably like a 60-40 or so in favor of Clem, if we look at the... okay, I should have probably looked this up before I started my cast today, but that would require me redoing this first minute of the video, and that sounds like a lot of effort. No, it's okay. Generally speaking, it does take, of course, a little bit of time before these games really get underway. So... it's even better, actually. So far this year, MaxPax has won 48.65% of the encounters against Clem. So that means that basically they've been going 50-50 against one another, which is really quite impressive. I think most recently when I watched them play, it was MaxPax actually who ended up winning 3-1. That was, I think, in the finals from either last week or the week before that. Anyways, so far, normal openers right here from both players. Nothing all too crazy, although this is a double gas start right here for Clem. So that means he will be able to get that quicker factory out. Of course, in effect, he also ends up delaying his own command center on the low ground. MaxPax, though, going for his beloved strategy. I'm assuming at least we're going to be seeing a Twilight Council here in just a moment. You can, of course, also go for a good old Stargate opener on Ghost River, but yeah, the man loves going. Oh, careful, don't lock in your own adept. The man loves going for Blink, of course, and he's very good when it comes to defending against early game shenanigans. Sorry, my curiosity. Pause, please. Sorry, had a keyboard issue. Should be good. Ready? Interesting. He had a keyboard issue, but he was still able to type? What do you think happened? Oh, it's actually a Stargate opener, by the way. What do you think happened? Let me know down below in the comment section. Did Clem accidentally disconnect his keyboard? Did he accidentally spill, I don't know. He's from France, right? So maybe he spilled a little bit of wine over... a little bit of Merlot over the keyboard. I think that's bad for the keys. You know what else is bad, though? Losing, yeah, an adept for free. He did, I guess, slow down the command center ever so slightly, but this map has a very rapid rush distance. You have to be very careful. Yeah, good control right here by Clem. Not going to be giving him that Reaper, and of course, those Reapers do have a rapid regeneration. Oracle is going to come up here momentarily for MaxPax. This actually isn't a whole lot of Protoss right now. Losing one of those units early does kind of suck. Now, of course, when you do get this Oracle out, life will be significantly easier. Nice snipe right there on at least one of the units, but this is still kind of scary. Yeah, look at Probius over here, trying his very best to get the kill, but honestly, this is a bit of a disaster. Yeah, lovely micro right there by Clem, but honestly, mostly miscontrol from MaxPax, and he's gonna have to pay the price. This is so much damage, oh my god. Yep. And this is a great example of the margin for error at high-level StarCraft, right? Like, we come to expect certain... Okay, it's just GG. Yeah, so we've come to expect certain skill when it comes to microing your units. And obviously, pro gamers, believe it or not, they are human. So they do occasionally make mistakes. I know, crazy idea. But jokes aside, yeah, on that map, if you end up mis-microing your units, your opponent basically just shows up in your natural expansion right away. It is incredibly easy to mess up. So that was a pretty quick expansion, of course, from MaxPax versus the late expansion for Clem. Clem's expansion, I mean, it went down later, but that adept tried harassing the SCV, didn't get killed in the SCV, so Clem at that point in the game maybe wasn't really that far ahead when it came to the worker count, but tech-wise, he was in a really solid position. Maybe a bit of an early GG, though, from MaxPax, but the thing is, he's got a lot of experience playing against Clem, and it's really difficult to beat Clem in an even game. When you start off a match with, like, what, a dozen worker losses, then it becomes pretty much impossible. Maybe you can still stay in the game for 5 minutes and basically just, yeah, malt your way to success, right? That's what pro gamers tend to do a lot, where they're like, they're just sitting there grumbling. I can't GG out yet because I'm not really losing games, but I also don't really want to stay in here because, right? You end up just trash talking yourself for about 5 minutes, which is not great when you're, playing a finals, so a best of 5 series in this particular case. Getting it over with, hitting the GG button sometimes is the healthiest choice. Alrighty. It's gonna be a Zealot here this time around for MaxPax. Would have been nice in the previous game. Cybercordo is going to finish up here momentarily too. Normally, he loves going for that Blink Stalker opener, but on Ghost River you do have that very quick air-to-air rush distance, right? So I'm assuming that's the reason. Either that or maybe he's just experimenting with a little bit more Stargate play. It's one of the builds that MaxPax mixes in, I want to say maybe 1 in 5, 1 in 4 games or so. In the other options he tends to go for, in the other games rather, he tends to go for the Twilight Council with quick blink and all that. Reaper, all the way towards the bottom left-hand corner of the map. Proby is here. He knows the inevitable. Yeah, that is a probe that accepted death. He had a little bit of time to contemplate it. Ultimately, though, that's opening up the front door for the Zealot over here to get a bit of work done. Zealots must be really tall, by the way. Like a Marine in a full Marine suit. These guys are probably like at least like 190, maybe? A Zealot is like, what, 2.5 meters? Easy. Anyways, just like the probe, the Zealot also accepted death. And once more, it is indeed going to be a Stargate right here for MaxPax. So the Zealot and the probe have sacrificed themselves, but they have died so that others can live. Right, this is basically the I don't want to deal with anything stupid again in game number 2. Early game right here for MaxPax. It's going to be a Cyclone, by the way, this time around, which is kind of cute. Obviously a bit of a different build here as well from Clem. All things considered. He's already got a bunker here on the low ground. Adept's going to shade behind the mineral line. Deny a bit of mining time. Thing is, of course, at this stage in the game, you're going to be using that time right here in the command center to make an orbital command anyways. So the Marines pop out. We may end up losing 1. Maybe 2. Yeah. A little surprised we didn't see them getting any movement done. Could have maybe tried to send them back into that bunker, but ultimately it doesn't really matter all too much. But you know what? If I'm gonna be critical of high-level StarCraft, I think seeing useless Marine losses is one of the things I can bring up. So, interestingly enough, we've got ourselves a Phoenix opener, just straight Phoenix here from MaxPax. So most of the time, MaxPax loves Twilight Council into Blink. However, whenever he does go for a Stargate opener, it's pretty much, well, always at least an Oracle to start things off. Obviously, historically, this is a build we've seen many, many times. So what's good about the Phoenix build is that if you micro everything correctly, and that's the big if, you don't really take any damage in the early game. So you can defend against everything that the Terran wants to throw at you. In this particular case, it's going to be 3 Marines. Could have been a 4th one in that plane, huh? Sorry, Clem. And then also a Cyclone. With good micro, you can keep a lot of this alive. So right now, Clem actually sees the medevac, or sorry, he sees with the medevac the Phoenix production, and he goes back home immediately. I think it might be time to unload these units. Indeed, the reinforcing army units are also coming across. Widowmine, okay, leading the charge. 1 Adept ends up falling. Usual transition from Phoenixes is into Colossi. So we already have a robotics facility done at this point. But MaxPax is not quite happy here to go straight into a Robo Bay. And Immortal might just be indeed the right call. Pylon is going to be targeted down immediately. Widowmine trying to get the sacrifice there. Ooh, nice snipe actually on that medevac. So that is denying any sort of high ground vision. Now an Immortal will be out, and the Immortal should seal the deal against basically all of these early game units here from the Terran. You gotta be careful here as Clem, though. He did already lose a bunch of units unnecessarily. Obviously, he did get quite a bit of damage done as well on the side of the Protoss, and arguably speaking, Protoss has lost more at this point in the game than the Terran, but it's very easy at this point in the game to get overwhelmed as well. Obviously, there's no charge or anything like that finishing up anytime soon, but these are also not Marines with any upgrades. So he actually feels like he can continue fighting for a little bit longer. Immortals, very good against the Cyclones, but as long as the Marines are the ones taking the beating, I guess it's alright. In the meantime, we have a Liberator going around as well in the natural expansion. Ultimately, though, this is mostly just a skill check, right? Both players trying their very best to be as obnoxious as possible, but I think the both of them, yeah, just want to drop the third base. Just a little bit of play fighting. A little bit of brotherly love right here. Okay. Clem goes back home. I'm liking this position for him a little bit better, though. The only thing that's a little shaky here for the Terran is the timing of these upgrades. So there's going to be a moment where Colossus will be out before any of the real Marine upgrades are done, right? So +1 and Combat Shield and Stimpak and all the rest of it. It's coming. It will be done here in a minute or so. And once Clem finishes it, life is going to be a bit easier. But for the time being, it can be a little bit sketchy. Then again, MaxPax doesn't know the exact timing of these upgrades. And I don't think he really wants to move across the map at this point anyways. Yeah, generally speaking, when you have an army that looks like this, where you just have a bunch of expensive units, it's hard to make a move, right? Especially when you don't have the extended thermal lens upgrade done yet. Plus, moving across the map right now would be pretty much certain death as soon as Stimpak finishes up. Okay. So, this is that lull in the Terran versus Protoss matchup, where both players... they're done teasing each other in the early game. They're done trying to see if they can get a quick and dirty win. Instead, now we're playing a good old macro game. He is still adding on a couple Phoenixes, by the way, which I do kind of like. Very frequently do we see Protoss players just done with Phoenix production at some point. And if you kind of have like 3 Phoenixes, it doesn't really do that much. There's obviously an upper limit as well. But the nice thing about having additional Phoenixes is that, say for example, right, Terran decides to go for a move out. You can fly into the natural expansion, lift up about a half dozen workers, kill them all, and then also fly back home again in time to defend. It's a really scary thing right now for Terran to move out. Plus, of course, if there's like siege tanks in the mix, or for example, a bunch of cyclones like that, you can lift them up and take them out of the equation. You can also nullify Widow Mines and all the rest of it, and it really is a great tool to add into the mix. Especially because this sort of army doesn't require quite as much micro. So you kind of put this army on one control group, you put the Phoenixes on another one, and usually you can control quite nicely. Plus, Phoenixes are really good against drop as well, right? If you do end up getting dropped by the Terran player, having them patrol this section of the main base, for example, it's a very easy way to shutting anything, any of that sort of aggression down. So I like Phoenixes. Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with Phoenixes, really. They're kind of terrible, but also amazing at the same time. I hope that clarifies things. Templar Archives coming up right here for the Protoss player. +1 armor also started up here for Clem. I'm assuming we're going to be seeing a armory in just a moment, and maybe even a second NG bay. 4th Nexus coming up, and that may just spur our Terran player to make a move. Or at least he's thinking about making a 4th Nexus. I mean, at this point, the supply count is... not deceiving us. This is right before MaxPax is really able to start up a lot of his production. And you can tell that this early game has been really solid here by Clem. Just overall, he's skyrocketing ahead when it comes to the supply count. Problem is, it's golden aura. Yeah, so on a lot of maps, you can just push into your opponent's base pretty easily. You can snipe on the right, snipe on the left, right, and you can get a bunch of damage done. But on this particular map, it's really difficult for, well, not just Terran, for Protoss, for Zerg as well, for everybody to attack into the first 4 bases. So this ramp over here, not really an option. This choke point over here, not really an option. This northern section, I guess, is the best spot, because it allows those Marines and Marauders to get a nice little concave. But Clem would like to push the issue, but he also knows that it's quite a delicate dance. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's not easy. You may have like a 40 supply lead as far as the army goes, but it's so difficult on this map to move in. Okay, there's the Stimpak activated. Apparently Clem is feeling brave enough to go in. Colossi are putting in so much work though, and MaxPax manages to hold for now, it seems. Charge is done. +1 is done. We have a cheeky group of Zealots on the other side of the map too, but concussive shelled Marauders are going to slow them down here regardless. Double upgrades coming up for MaxPax. Still working with, well, a very substantial deficit, but he's alive. One of the downsides, of course, for Terran at this point is that he didn't really have any Vikings yet. So Vikings are coming. You really are looking for, yeah, about 8 or so minimum. So he's now, yeah, now he's up to 11, which is really quite nice. With the Colossus out of the equation, right? Imagine this army without the Colossi, and suddenly, yeah, this Terran army just overwhelms. And so far, honestly, this entire series, Clem has been overwhelming. Other than the 2 Marines in the early game, this game has been basically perfect for him. I'm not letting go of the Marines in the early game, okay? Disruptor added into the mix as well. But still, Clem is feeling quite ambitious, and this fight is really good for the Terran. Assuming the battery overcharge is not going to hurt him too much. Yeah, it's keeping a lot of those expensive Protoss units around. Vikings having a grand old time though, shutting down all of the Colossi, and just like that, Clem makes it look easy as he wins game number 2. Alcyone is going to be the third game in this best of 5 series. Already match point right here for Clem. I don't think we're going to be seeing any Stargate openers anymore. No. I just don't believe that this is something that MaxPax wants to experiment with at this point in the series. I don't know, Stargate openers are good if you micro everything well, but the top tier Terrans are so strong in general. The problem is you kinda lack initiative, right? So when you're playing Blink Stalker, you can go and punish your opponent and sometimes even win the game. When you go for that like Phoenix opener, sure, if you micro everything really well, you don't really take a lot of early game damage, but at the same time you also can't really go and win. Sometimes I guess you can counterattack if the Terran really messes up, but you really do lack a bunch of initiative. You're kind of just hanging out as the Protoss and you're waiting until the Terran comes to punch you, right? And it's all about you to try and block the punches. Your main counter, I guess, would be to, well, try and for example, pick up a few SCVs, but that really doesn't quite hit in the same way as... There we go. It is indeed going to be that Twilight Council. But yeah, it really doesn't hit in the same way as that Terran army does. Alrighty. Starport, on the back of this, Marines, 2 at a time. I've seen MaxPax make quick work of other Terran players playing good old 4-gate Blink Stalker. But we'll have to see if he wants to play that against Clem as well, especially on a map like this. I mean, against Clem in general, it's really difficult. I don't think you really want to go Blink Stalkers or like an all-in type of Blink Stalker opener against Clem. So when it comes to the Blink Stalker openers these days, there's a few different variations. There's the 4-gate, there's the 2-gate, and then there's the 3-gate. 3-gate is kind of like the middle of the road approach, generally speaking. Quite popular, actually. There's the Robo facility coming up. There's indeed the Blink. So if you go for 2 gates, you have to go and expand behind it ASAP. So you have to take a 3rd base as quickly as possible. With a 4-gate opener, you usually go for the gateways first, and then you add on, well, the good old 3rd nexus, and then you may be able to micro your way to the victory on the other side of the map. Unlikely for that to happen with just 2 gateways. 3 gateways is kind of like the, I don't really know exactly what Terran's up to, so I guess I'm kind of doing this and I'm doing a little bit of that. Right? It's like a little bit of eco and a little bit of damage. Usually in StarCraft 2, those sorts of middle-of-the-road strategies really don't work very well at the highest level. But I think the 3-gate opener is a bit of an exception in that regard. So it is indeed going to be 3 gateways here for MaxPax. Thing is, it's also a nice structure just to wall off with. So say, for example, there would be a Hellion army or something like that. Just having the extra surface area really does help. So this will be a 3rd nexus on the back of this for MaxPax, and he can obviously put in some work as well on the other side of the map. Downside is, though, when you don't open up Phoenixes, these medevac drops can just hang out. They can just go anywhere. This is the type of stuff that wins games for Clem at the absolute... You wanted to get the big clump over there. This is the type of build that can win Clem straight... Or this can win Clem games straight up when he goes up against weaker Protoss players. Kind of like the 4-gate Blink micro that MaxPax likes to do against weaker Terrans. The good old Widowmine drop has a lot of potential when you go up against weaker Protosses. Both players testing the waters a little bit. 3 SCVs killed by a bunch of Adepts. Honestly, not a great start right here for Clem. I think it's really good when you go for the Widowmine drop and you keep that medevac alive. So you just always have the medevac hanging out here in the corner or right over here, just to like occupy maybe 2-ish stalkers inside of the main base, and to always at least create a bit of a threat. Right now though, yeah, MaxPax can focus all of his micro right here at the front. And we have 2 siege tanks, but 2 siege tanks is not quite optimal here when it comes to the base defense. He's currently repositioning some of them, and you can tell here that MaxPax is getting some nice bits of value. There is, by the way, a Raven here as well, getting in some damage. Another downside of not opening up with Phoenixes. These Ravens. I've seen Ravens. I've casted a bunch of games, actually, in the Dallas Regionals, where there's a Raven hanging out in the corner, and every time it's got energy, it just goes in, drops an auto turret, and backs off. When you see the top tier Terrans do it, it doesn't really... Like, when they go up against top tier Protosses, it doesn't really look that effective. But it's one of those things that over the course of a game, against, again, weaker Protoss players, can absolutely get dozens of kills. This is a wonderful play right here by MaxPax. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So he just ended up killing both of the tech labs that were researching Stimpack and combat shields. So that really takes the wind out of the sails here of our Terran here, because he's not going to be able to do much. He's going to have to remake those upgrades before he can really achieve much. Clem right now decides to just go for the third command center, but any sort of timing attack that Terran originally hadn't... Well, it's just not going to happen. He's not going to be able to execute on it. Full restart on both of those upgrades, and that is going to give MaxPax all the time in the world. Now, how exactly is he going to try and play this one out then? He could certainly be thinking about making another Nexus. Could be building the Nexus over here as well if he wants to. Instead, what we're going for, it seems, is the Charge Research, +1, as well as a Templar Archives. I would imagine that this is going to be Charge Slot Zealot, especially since one of the gas over here is not quite taken yet. Storm would be a bit pricey. He's still harassing on the other side of the map too. Wouldn't mind drop. Attempted to move towards the left side of the map. So far, honestly, Clem is not really getting a whole lot done in this game. Yeah, he's killed 3 Stalkers, which is nice. He did actually kill, So it's one of those things where you don't quite realize it, but that Raven actually did get a decent amount of damage in. Speaking of which, Raven right now trying to make its way towards the top right. Already 5 confirmed kills. Yeah, so you just sort of have this thing hanging in the corner, and then you drop a couple auto turrets, and then you back off again. And pretty much every single time, it kills at least 2 workers. If Terran, yeah, it gets lucky, sometimes they will kill like 5 workers. They actually really deal quite a significant amount of damage. At the very least, it's preventing the all-army hotkey, you know? Yeah, you can go for a shield battery over here, that kind of works. You can go for a photon cannon. But already forcing out a shield battery here is well worth it for Clem, considering he's now got 6 kills. Somehow, if some way you can bring that Raven back home, you can always, well, use it for like an anti-armor missile or something like that too. It is, by the way, going to be... I was wrong. It's not going to be just for Archons and Zealots. It's going to be for straight-up Psionic Storm. Okay. Now, this is that moment, though, where Clem does have those upgrades done. The ones that were supposed to finish a little bit earlier. 4th Nexus. About 3/4 or so, maybe 80% of the way done. Right around the time that Clem is finally securing the 3rd base. Of course, though, with the way that the mule mechanic works for Terran, their income is still going to be off the charts. Well, maybe not quite off the charts, because I literally have them right here. But you can tell that over the last few minutes, Protoss was really good economically. But right now, with those mules returning their cargo, yeah, we're going to see a nice little peak right there for Clem for at least a minute or so. Ghost Academy on the back of this here as well for the Terran. So now with 3 base economy, Ghosts are going to be at least an option. And obviously, Ghosts are going to be really good against clumped up units because of the EMP, and it's also going to be really good against Archons and Templar. You cannot EMP units that are inside of the War Prism, so that's why those High Templar are hiding inside of it. But at the same time, if you now end up losing the Prism, life does become very sketchy. On the back of this, we do have a Robo Bay together with a 2nd Robo Facility. Wouldn't mind drop. Attempt to get something done, but only a single confirmed kill. Raven still hanging out as well in the corner. The nice thing about the Raven too is that you can have a maximum of 200 energy, so you don't even really have to think about it all too much, you know? It's one of those things where you just kind of, as long as you think about it every 3 minutes or so, you're fine. Just leave it hanging there. Whenever you have a little bit of time, drop a bunch of auto turrets, put it back in the corner. And obviously against Stargate openers, you just do not have this as an option at all. Alright. Viking count already growing, which will be convenient, because the Colossi are coming up 2 at a time as soon as, there we go, we finish up that pylon. MaxPax not really interested in going for a big attack, it seems. Although I've got a feeling he could try. Especially with, like, the entire Terran army distracted over here. He could try and send in the Zealots on the right side. Yeah, Clem right now thinks the same thing. Decides to move a few Marines and Marauders on over in that direction. He's looking for a juicy storm. That's not quite it. But just denying the 4th command center here is really quite good for the Protoss. Okay. 5th Nexus coming up, by the way. Or at least mining over at the 5th Nexus is coming up, as we already have finished it. Rich Vespian Geyser returns twice as much gas. Not bad. Here's the storm. Good dodging by Clem, though. Colossus coming up as well. Oh, that was a juicy one. Mostly just forcing the Terran to back off. In the meantime, we do have the Zealots getting a good bit of damage done on those SCVs. But ultimately, Clem's goal here was to try and secure the 4th command center, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. This game hasn't really been going his way, all things considered, as we do have another Widowmine drop attempted over here. This game hasn't been super smooth for him, especially now with the entire Protoss army finding a bit of an angle over at the 3rd. Big EMP, but not quite good enough to shut down all of the Templar. Do we have one more? No. Well, at the very least, after that EMP, we certainly do not. Colossus having a grand old time, but ultimately does get shot out of the sky by those Vikings. Or, well, it's actually only a singular one. Is there enough buffer, though? Okay, with those Zealots coming in, the Colossi will be safe. But that did feel a little bit sketchy. MaxPax has been behind as far as the supply count goes for basically the entire game, but exactly with this warp in that he's completing right now, finally he manages to get an advantage. He's gone all the way up to 88 probes, which is very substantial. And it is this is that more new school style of Protoss, right? Where they're taking a page out of the Zerg's book. Or Protoss tried to basically just make a massive amount of economy to then throw them away. To throw away those units against that wall of Terran. Terrans have gotten very good when it comes to playing defensively on 4 bases, but here comes Clem. That is an awkward engagement right now, especially with another Colossus coming in from the side. Concave here looking absolutely fantastic for Clem. Vikings also finding an angle, and they do shot another one of those Colossi out of the sky. Ooh, that was a really neat engagement actually for Clem. I thought initially it was chasing a little too deep, but as long as you shut down that splash damage from the Protoss, which is much easier said than done, you can fight quite confidently. How many Vikings do we still have at this point? 8. I thought for a second 18. I was like, what? When did you make all of those? Now, 8 is pretty good. Soon it's gonna be 12 though, and that is much better. Especially since MaxPax is going up to 5. Oh, well, this is a misplay. Nicely done right here by Max. He's going up to 5 Colossi. Yeah, he's got 5 of them right now. That's a lot. 3rd Robo facility coming up too. There's a flank though. Is there enough? I was gonna say, these units from the left were not quite expected, but the flank is not really with that many units. Reinforcing Protoss also shows up. 13 Zealots get warped in all at the same time. These are properly upgraded Zealots too, by the way. Clem's supply count still looking really solid, but these fights are looking quite desperate for him. You wonder where all of that supply is currently at. Another Colossus does get killed, but the Stalkers and the Zealots don't mess around, and we have a Disruptor transition coming up. Yeah, triple Disruptor. That is going to make these fights a lot more hectic here for Clem, because obviously Ghosts are good. They can shut down Archons, and they can do really well against High Templar. But the Disruptor's Nova is, of course, cooldown based. So you can't just shut that down nearly as easily. And right now, the Zealots are just destroying him. +3 for the ground units here for the Protoss, also not forgotten. Here's that Raven once again popping something down, but ultimately the Photon Cannon will manage to kill the Raven here. That one was annoying Protoss for quite a while, but it doesn't really matter. That was just a last-ditch effort. It's MaxPax who wins the fight at the front, and therefore he wins the game. Alrighty, Site Delta is next. Scouting probe going across the map. Mostly just interested to see how many gases Clem decided to take and whether or not it's going to be a quick expansion on the low ground or a quick factory instead. Just keeping the Terran player honest. Always nice as well to know whether or not Terran is actually building their barracks inside of the main base. Of course, sometimes we do see those barracks built on the other side instead. And knowing whether or not you need to make a zealot, always pretty sweet. It's going to be a single gas start right here for Clem. Command center does get planted down. Thought for a second the probe was going to be able to get the block in, but good movement right there by Clem. Starts it up as quickly as possible. Did you know, by the way, that the model for a building command center is literally identical to the one of a building supply depot, just scaled down? Or I guess for the command center, it's scaled up. Actually, realistically in game design, this one is scaled down. Anyways, at least the top section. Now there's like, there's a little feet to the supply depot. But when the construction first starts up, I think, I'm fairly certain. I'm fairly certain it's the exact same model. Ooh, triple CC from Clem. Alrighty. So we're mixing it up a little bit. Side Delta, of course. Basically the polar opposite of, for example, Ghost River. This map has a very large rush distance, or a very long rush distance, and it takes a long while to get across the map. It's gonna be a Stargate opener because of that here again for MaxPax, but if he knew about the triple CC, he wouldn't mind going for something, yeah, maybe a little bit more aggressive. Could certainly be an Oracle as well, though. Triple CC. It's a very powerful build, but certainly a little bit risky. If Clem ends up facing off, for example, against, well, 4-gate Blink Stalker, life can be very tough. He's gonna go Mass Marine on the back of this too. So he doesn't have a lot of gas. And rather than spending additional resources right now on, for example, a factory, it's gonna be triple CC into triple barracks. Very powerful on paper, very easy to miscontrol. It is indeed going to be an Oracle. Nice thing right here for Clem, though, is the fact that if he ends up losing a bunch of SCVs, with such a quick third command center, he doesn't really care that much. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose any workers if you can at all avoid it, but if you're gonna lose workers, at least, you know, do it while you have an extra base compared to your opponent. This is completely scoutless, by the way, for Clem, so he has no clue about what's going on, and that does make the game quite tricky. At this point, MaxPax will be picking up on the fact that the Marine count is growing a little too quick. So he knows roughly what's going on. So we've got a second tech lab as well. Now, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly for Protoss what he's playing against, but he should get a very good understanding, especially when this Oracle goes into the main base. Trying to go after the fresh mule. Nice. That's actually a good chunk of resources gone. Ooh, don't lose the Oracle. Okay. And despite not seeing the third command center, MaxPax can put one and one together at this point. He knows exactly what he's playing against. And he knows that he's going to need a lot of additional eco himself as well. Of course, Clem is eventually going to be able to finish up a really powerful timing attack with Stimpack and Combat Shields finishing up. And it's lined up together with the +1 infantry weapons too. So even though Clem did cut a couple corners early on, he's already survived the worst. And I'm imagining here that he feels pretty comfortable. There's obviously not going to be nearly as many medevacs here early on as you would like here as Terran. So, no easy way out, I guess, for the... no easy way out right here for the Terran player if he does overcommit on the other side of the map. It's going to be charged as the first upgrade for MaxPax. That upgrade does take a while to finish. But it sometimes does catch Terran players off guard quite a bit. MaxPax trying to chrono boost out as many workers as possible. Additional gateways coming up as well. He did take the gases over in the natural, by the way. Sometimes Protoss players have been skipping those, or only taking one, just to be able to rapidly expand all over the map, but apparently MaxPax's not going for that. Seems like a lot of the Protoss players, especially in the Asian region, are a big fan of that. In the Asian region also of the Dallas event that I was talking about earlier. They've been playing that very swarmy Protoss style. It seems to be very popular currently on the Chinese server. Alrighty, so here's that army though that I was talking about, and it is a scary one. These units hit a pretty significant power spike. Main problem here for Clem is that he can't really Like, every time he uses Stimpack, he's killing a big chunk of his own army because he can't heal them up. Medevacs are coming eventually. Proxy Gate coming up at the bottom of the map too, which I quite like, because usually this will be the moment where Terran is going to be a little bit adventurous, and obviously Charge is finishing up. So warp in over here. Bunch of Zealots running into that base. Perfect timing here for MaxPax. Oh, it looks like Clem is actually not really planning on being all too aggressive. Okay, Oracle getting an extra 2 kills. Kind of like a Raven, right? In that previous game. Although eventually I would imagine there is going to be at least a Viking. Yeah, I was gonna say, it'd be crazy if there's no Viking out. To produce a starport just to make a Phoenix, just to shut down the Raven is a bit much. But you know what? If we're gonna see dozens of kills on those Ravens over time, I think I would have rather seen an early Stargate than just to get rid of that unit altogether. It's one of those things where... Ooh. You see that? What the heck? I saw that SCV bleed, but it had full hit points. Am I crazy? Whoa, did you see that? The SCV had a little bit of blood coming out of the top, but the... Okay, that was just an animation, because the unit has full HP. Plus, I didn't even know that SCVs could bleed. Weird. You know what else is weird? Mules are fully automated, right? If we can have fully automated mining, why in the world do we have guys in space construction vehicle suits, in SCV suits, harvesting resources as well? Like, maybe that's a good idea for the start of but like making this many of them? You'd imagine as far as lore goes, it's much more efficient to just use, I guess, scrap metal or whatever that they use from Orbital, right? To just, yeah, cool them down. Just mine with mules exclusively. Anyways, maybe that is actually what they do in the lore of StarCraft. It's just that in the multiplayer version of the game, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to sit back for 50 minutes and make a bunch of mules. Robo Bay coming up. Second Robo facility. Storm is going to finish up in just a few seconds. Still though, that's a lot of tech. And that means that, again, we're running that very delicate dance, right? We're moving across the map, and we're trying to get some damage done here as MaxPax, but he needs to be incredibly cautious that he does not lose units for free. He will be having a very powerful army, but we're still a while away from this army really shutting down the Terran player. So there are Templar. I would imagine they're once again inside of the medevac. But the storms have to be good. Okay. Oh, no, don't lose the prism. Oh, he loses the prism. Lovely Widowmine positioning right there from Clem. Clem anticipating that exact move, and look at this. I was just talking about how delicate this army feels. It really is the best description I can give you. Because suddenly, the Terran army is pretty much indestructible. That was a really nice Widowmine burrow, though, from Clem. Anticipating that exact move. I don't think that was luck. I'm pretty sure he put that there on purpose. Wonderful play. It's gonna be Clem who wins the series 3-1. Now, if you enjoyed watching this video, please take the 1 second that it takes to hit the like button down below. It really does help. And if you enjoyed it a lot, make sure you subscribe so you get notified as soon as future videos go live. For now, though, have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to smile, and I hope to see you once again very soon for another video.